Jesus seems to have gone off the script a little bit as the Prince of Peace, saying that he came not to bring peace, but rather division. So what is Jesus trying to say? What type of division is he speaking of? Well, let me give you an example that you may have already experienced, or you may one day experience. In fact, it might be today. It's a division that usually enters through one member of the household. Maybe it is a student who attends religious ed or youth group or the fellowship of Christian athletes at school, or they just came back from a summer trip and they're on fire. And they learn something new, something about God, something about their identity, and they want to bring it into the home. Or maybe it comes through the mother or father. Maybe challenged at one of the Sunday masses, maybe listening to Christian radio or a Christian podcast. They hear about what some other family is doing to live out their faith, and they say, honey, I'd like to do something different. You know, from time to time, parishes have changes. Have you ever experienced that? Now, by the way, I know nothing of your history, but I just have worked in parish work for 12 years. And sometimes in parish work, the pastor wants to make a change. It's like, well, and there can be division. Maybe it comes to the grandparents. Maybe after 25 or even 50 years of marriage, you want to try something new. And the division is identified and immediately resisted. Well, why now? Well, so God did something in your life that he didn't do in mine, so he loves you more than me? What makes you so special? Oh, you think you're better than me because you want to step things up a notch. And there will be division. Jesus came to set the world on fire. And how great is his anguish until it is accomplished. First and foremost, we need to make sure that when that fire is being kindled in others, that we do not seek to quench it. Maybe listen for the voice of the Holy Spirit speaking to all of us. There can be a center of our marriage and a center of our families that we didn't even know was there, that is giving a peace that the world gives, but not the peace that Jesus came to bring. And I think it's summarized well by one of Pope Benedict's lines. He says, "You were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness." And so many times, without even realizing it, we are conditioned by the world, seeking comfort, convenience, and complacency. And the world will offer peace. You have a problem, you have a pain, there's a pill or a pillow for that. Think of how many advertisements are all about increasing your pleasure and decreasing your pain. And lo and behold, in our comfort, the slightest pain can sometimes be unbearable. Rather than being grateful for what we have, we seek the next technology, the next flashy thing, or creaturely comfort. Or we immediately seek to numb that pain in one way or another. But you were made for greatness. Sometimes we can think that the greatest pain is a physical one. But the greatest pain that we can experience is existential. We heard from Jeremiah and from Jesus today, and I think that we can see an anticipation of Jesus' anguish in Jeremiah's own words. In Jeremiah chapter 20, beginning with verse 9, he says, because, by the way, like we heard in today's first reading, he is being persecuted for being a prophet of the Lord, and he's suffering for it. Lashes, or imprisonment, or just being isolated. And he says, if I say to myself, if I say, I will not mention him or speak his name anymore, there is in my heart, as it were, a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I am weary holding it in, and I cannot. So there were moments where Jeremiah even sought to say, you know what, I'm going to give up this whole prophet gig. It's not worth it. The pay's not that great. You lose all your friends, and you're hated by everyone. I'll just give that up. And as he's taking a step away from that vocation to greatness and fidelity to the Lord, that fire burns once more. And he cannot ignore it, and he cannot suppress it. And so he returns to prophecy with all of the inconvenience that it brings. Because the greatest suffering we can experience is existential suffering, is suffering that comes from our very being, of a spiritual nature. We were made in the image of a God who is love. That kind of love. And for times we can ignore it, we can forget it maybe, we can try to suppress it, but you know the one moment we cannot ignore it? If we have the grace of having our awareness of our impending death, when there's no more life to live and all we can do is look back and ask, did I fulfill my purpose? Did I come to live the greatness that God was calling me to live? Or did I take the easy route of comfort, convenience, complacency? Was I the one who was trying to rekindle a fire in myself and in my family and in my community? Or was I the one who was trying to squash it to maintain the status quo? Well, I have good news for you. There's a medicine if you're not in touch with that fire today. It's a medicine that Jesus knows we need, which is why it is a commandment not to be done out of duty, but out of desire. But sometimes we forget how much we need the Lord, so we need it to be a commandment to keep us close to him. And that is to come here at least once a week before his blessed sacrament, and in word and sacrament, to expose ourselves to his fire, that the fire in us can be rekindled. I want you to think about this past week, and if it was defined by greatness. And again, please understand, I can look back at plenty of my weeks, even recently, and go, yeah, I could have done a better job at that. Could have been more faithful. Could have been more fervent. But I also want you to consider this upcoming week and how this week can be just a little bit different. With your spouse, with yourself, with your children, I challenge you to have a conversation this week. When has there been a devotion or a practice, sometime when you wanted for yourself or for others to make the center of your relationship not comfort and convenience, but to make the Lord more of the center? And where can we revisit that and maybe try it again? Something as simple as more family dinners without the TV. Maybe a daily devotional in the morning, or prayer before nighttime, or praying before meals. Whatever the case is, we have to keep this fire burning of fidelity to the Lord, faithful to that anguish that Jesus wants to set the whole world ablaze and wants you to be a torch in his hand to do that very thing, beginning with yourself, those closest to you, and the world around us that is in anguish and doesn't even know how much they are longing for him. And I encourage us as we are here gathered today to make our prayer not, Lord, spare me from suffering, but Lord, give me such an ardent, burning fire of your love in my heart that any other suffering will pale by comparison. Lord, reignite the flame of your love in my heart that I have received by virtue of my baptism, and set my heart ablaze so that you can use me to set the world ablaze.